If you can dream it, you can do it. One of Walt Disney's most famous quotes that he never said. I'm Scott Wolf, and I'm going to introduce you to the person who wrote that. It wasn't even written for Disney. There are so many quotes attributed to Walt Disney, but not all of them are legitimately his. I want to talk with you about Walt's quotes and also fill you in on the history of If You Can Dream It, You Can Do It. I remember many years ago listening to hours and hours of an interview the reporter Pete Martin did with Walt Disney. I think there were 16 cassette tapes, and it was the first time that I was hearing the real Walt Disney. Not Walt in front of a camera doing an introduction for his TV show or something. It was real, unscripted Walt Disney. The interviews were done to capture Walt's story for this book that Pete was doing with Walt's daughter Diane. In fact, when people ask me to recommend a book about Walt Disney, I recommend they try to find this one. As I listened to Walt tell his story in those interviews, I was sucked in, learning first-hand Disney history from Walt Disney himself. I was fascinated with just how real he seemed. He wasn't like a polished actor who's used to being on camera and telling entertaining stories. There was a rawness and a simpleness to it that appealed to me very much. I actually think that part of his success is that he was just real, and I think that's how he was able to tune into his audience and know what the public wanted. Walt also had very talented writers who helped him write for things such as magazines and newspapers, perhaps a message to shareholders in the company's annual report, or a message to readers in a Disneyland souvenir guidebook, such as this one here. This is from 1960. Inside of it, Walt welcomes guests to Disneyland on the first page. Walt personally approved everything that was said to be written by him, but it wasn't necessarily words that Walt came up with. This document from 1975 was an official company source of approved Walt quotes, and it's got some great photos of Walt too. All of these quotes were either spoken by or at least approved by Walt as his. Here's one I've always loved, but instead of reading it, why don't I let you hear Walt say it? And I'll show you some of these photos while I play that for you.
You know, I was stumped one day when a little boy asked, "Do you draw Mickey Mouse?" And I had to admit I do not draw anymore. Well, then you think of all the jokes and ideas. No, I said, I don't do that. Finally, he looked at me and said, "Mr. Disney, just what do you do?" Well, I said, sometimes I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody. I guess that's the job I do.
While Walt did say it, that was written by Marty Sklar for a presentation Walt was to give when the governor of Florida was publicly announcing that Disney would have a presence there. The story about a little boy asking Walt those questions and saying, "Well, what do you do?" is true, but Marty embellished it with that bee story because it made for a better presentation. I'm going to play for you Walt telling that story, not for a presentation, not reading from a script. This is how Walt told the end of that story. This is after that boy had asked all those questions.
He looked a little disgusted. He said, "Mr. Disney, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question."
That was the whole thing. There was no talk of bees or anything. Another one of Walt's quotes was about how it was all started by a mouse. Now, this was written for an episode of his Disneyland television series in 1955. And after presenting all the details for the upcoming Disneyland park, the show focused on the history of Mickey Mouse. Here's the source for that quote.
During the last few years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse. Now, that's why I want this part of the show to belong to Mickey, because the story of Mickey is truthfully the real beginning of Disneyland.
So you can see Walt did say that quote. He may not have come up with it himself, but he definitely approved it and said it in the show. Now, this official book from within Disney is from the 1970s, after Walt passed away. And you know what quote is not in here? If you can dream it, you can do it, because it hadn't been written yet. A couple other quotes not in here are, "All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them," and "Laughter is timeless, imagination has no age, and dreams are forever." I don't think Walt ever said those. If you have proof of a source for those, please let me know. As for "If you can dream it, you could do it," I think that the reason people believe it was said by Walt is because it was used in an attraction at EPCOT called Horizons, although the attraction changed it from you to we. If we can dream it, we can do it. That was seen on the wall in the attraction queue and was heard in the ride as well. Listen to the beginning of the Horizons theme song.
If we can dream it, then we can do it. Yes, we can, yes, we can. If we can dream it, then we can do it. Yes, we can, yes, we can.
Have you ever looked beyond today into the future?
GE also had a slogan, "We bring good things to life," and a tweaked version of that slogan was also heard in Horizons. Instead of "We bring good things to life," it became "We bring our dreams to life." Listen to this.
With what we know and what we're learning to do, we really can bring our dreams to life. It takes a lot of work, but the truth is, if we can dream it, we can do it.
Now I have somebody standing by that I want you to meet. This is the real person who came up with the inspirational quote, "If you can dream it, you can do it." I'd like you to meet Sheralyn Silverstein. Hi, Sheralyn.
Hi, Scott. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. So Walt Disney never said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." You wrote that for General Electric, not even for Disney. In fact, it was years after Walt passed away. So what's the story behind that?
I was working as a young writer at an agency in New York called Marsteller, which is has gone. Burson Marsteller still exists, I think, but Marsteller was at that time a small kind of a boutique shop. Did great work. It was run by Bill Marsteller had left by the time I got there, but he was a giant in the business, if you want to call somebody that. But anyway, I got this job, and GE was obviously a big client, an impressive client, and their umbrella campaign, if you will, that's a campaign that's for the whole brand out in the world. That campaign was being done by an agency called BBD&O, one of the best agencies in the business ever. And they had come up with, and I'm going to show you this.
Okay.
They came up with a tagline, which is "We bring good things to life," and that was the tagline for General Electric. There's no doubt about it. So they wanted somebody to do, not BBD, but GE, the recruitment part of their business, which was getting young engineers to come to work for them. That's really the bread and butter of any place like that. Is, we need young, vibrant, smart, intellectual, fantastic engineers to come to work for us, and that's a big deal, to get people from the best of the best, like the MITs and the Harvards and the Yales and those kind. I forgive me if I'm missing the better engineering schools too, but the point was, we want these young, bright minds to come. And we want to inspire them. We want them to know that, we support them. And when they get here, they're going to be able to do all the things that they've imagined they could do. And that, that's why "If you can dream it, you can do it" worked so well, because imagine talking to a young student and saying, "If you can dream it, you can do it. You can do anything." That was not in the brief, but the idea was we want to inspire young people, the graduates, people about to graduate, to come to us and work with us. So I, along with a couple of art directors, worked on the project. I had the absolute bottom of the barrel of the assignment because I was the youngest on staff, and I was grateful to have the assignment. But the guys that had been there a while, the senior staff worked on TV for this pitch. We were going to pitch Jack Welch for this business. He was the person that was going to look at this stuff. And we worked round the clock, and my partner and I created the print campaign. And the print campaign was ads that were going to appear in publications, the smaller part of the assignment. And one of the ads I wrote was a picture. I don't have the ad, but I have the brochure. Of a woman talking to a young man, and the quote said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." So it went to the client. I was too young to go to those kind of top level meetings. I didn't go. But when Lou Mignani, who I worked for, he was great. He was the president of Marsteller. He came back from the meeting, he was beaming, and he said to me, Jack Welch pointed to that ad and said, "I want to buy that ad." And that was it. Boom. Yeah. And from there, we won the business. We did the campaign. We did a brochure. We did several print ads. The brochure I've shown you on the cover is "If you can dream it, you can do it." And on the back is "We bring good things to life." And the rest is history. But it was exciting.
I would think so.
Not long after this, we did the campaign. Luke came to me one day while I was working, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. They want to, G wants to put it in EPCOT." And I said, "Are you kidding?" And he said, "This is great." He was very excited,
So when you found out about that, EPCOT wasn't even open yet. Do you remember your reaction?
I didn't know what that was. All due respect, I didn't care what, all I thought was, oh my gosh, we're going to have to go to Disney and see this, this is just going to be amazing.
That's so cool though.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, I have to say.
How did you feel seeing that people were saying that Walt Disney was responsible for the slogan that you wrote?
I think there was a part of me, the knee-jerk reaction was, wait a second, Walt. How many great things did he do? I get that, but he didn't do that one. And in my life and in my job and in the world we live in, writers and designers and people that do what we do, our attribution is coin of the realm for us. If you can walk into a client and say, "I wrote ABC." Now everything's a team, but there are people there's a person that wrote that. And if you can go into any kind of place and say, "I did that," well, that's what you have, that's all that you have. And I got confidence, I got more confidence. I mean, one of the things that I really didn't have was confidence. Every day I would go to work and think, oh my gosh, I hope I have my job. I have a job by the end of the day, because I was working with some of the best talent that I've ever worked with.
It's funny because "If you can dream it, you can do it" is such a confident statement, but you didn't have the confidence yet.
That's absolutely true. And that happens a lot. You're writing and you say, "Gee, why don't I feel like this?" Yeah, you're totally right about that though. Totally right about that.
What are some other campaign slogans you created?
I wrote, "When you're here, your family," for Olive Garden.
I remember that. That was really popular too. I have a friend, Connie, who worked at Disneyland. She was a tour guide and later the Disneyland ambassador. And Walt actually told her, coming to Disneyland was like having guests in your backyard. And you want them to have the best time possible. So you want to be the best host or hostess with your family and friends. So when you're here, your family would have worked perfect for Disneyland. It could end up a Walt Disney quote one day.
It better not. It better not. I want to put in a plug for the Lead the Way Fund for the Army Rangers. Lead the Way Fund helps take care of Army Rangers who have been injured and helps take care of the families of fallen Army Rangers. And one of the lines I wrote for that campaign is "Peace can be held too." And that for me is one of the stronger lines I've ever written. There was some pushback around for that, but the truth is that when these men come home, these guys who've been deployed 2 and 3 times and they've been injured, their world has changed. Some of them, they walk out the door, they hear a backfire of a car, they can't exist. I mean, and then others have been so severely injured that they have to relearn walking and talking. So peace can be held too. War is hell is the obvious old line, but peace can be held too was something I felt could resonate with people, So that was one of my best, I think, that I've done.
Well, that's powerful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, Sheralyn. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And just remember, Scott, if you can dream it, you can do it.